In 1986, a lake in Cameroon killed 1,746 people in a single night. No eruption, no flood, no warning, they just stopped breathing where they stood. But that lake isn't even close to the strangest one on Earth, because there are lakes that dissolve flesh, lakes so radioactive that 1 hour on the shore is fatal, and one that's been sealed under 4 kilometers of ice for 15 million years with something still alive inside it. By the end of this video, we'll reach that sealed lake, a body of water buried beneath Antarctica that scientists still can't fully explain. But one of these lakes has been hidden from everything, including sunlight, since before our species even existed. And what's been found inside it might change how we search for life beyond Earth. If you enjoy this kind of content, subscribe, it really helps. But before we get to a lake that's been hidden from the entire world, let's start with one the Soviet Union tried to erase. In 1990, standing on the shore of Lake Karachay for 1 hour would have delivered roughly 6 sieverts of radiation to your body. For context, 4 sieverts is enough to kill half the people exposed to it. 6 is a near-certain death sentence, and this wasn't some massive industrial reservoir or glowing nuclear crater. It was a pond, smaller than half a square kilometer, tucked inside the southern Ural Mountains of Russia. You could walk around it in 20 minutes, that is, if you survived the walk. Lake Karachay sat next to the Mayak nuclear complex, one of the Soviet Union's most secretive weapons facilities. Starting in the late 1940s, engineers needed somewhere to dump high-level radioactive waste, the kind of material too dangerous to store in containers. Their solution was simple and catastrophic. They poured it into the lake. For decades, cesium-137 and strontium-90 accumulated in the water and sediment, turning this unremarkable body of water into the most polluted place on. The danger wasn't just for those standing nearby. In 1967, a severe drought partially dried the lake, exposing the radioactive lakebed to open air. Winds picked up contaminated dust and carried it across the surrounding region, spreading radioactive particles over an area home to roughly 500,000 people. It was one of the worst radiological events in Soviet history, and it was barely acknowledged at the time. The government's eventual fix was as blunt as the original crime. They decided to bury the entire lake. Over several decades, engineers filled Karachay with layers of concrete blocks, rock, and soil, sealing the radioactive sediment beneath a massive cap. By 2015, the lake officially no longer existed on any map, but the radiation underneath hasn't gone anywhere. Contaminated groundwater continues to migrate outward through the surrounding rock, slowly spreading beyond the boundaries of the original site. The lake is gone, but its poison is still moving. Karachay, so unsettling, isn't the scale of the contamination, it's the contrast. From the surface, it looked like any other small mountain pond. Ordinary water, ordinary shoreline, nothing about it warned you that standing there would kill you before the week was out. Lake Karachay killed everything around it. But not every lethal lake is purely destructive. One of them is actually keeping an entire species alive. You may have seen the viral photos from Lake Natron in northern Tanzania. Birds and bats frozen in place, encrusted in white mineral, looking like stone statues pulled from a nightmare. The internet called it the lake that turns animals to stone. The reality is less supernatural, but honestly stranger. Those animals died of natural causes near the lake, and over weeks or months, their carcasses were slowly coated in a thick crust of sodium carbonate and other mineral salts. A photographer arranged them into dramatic poses for a book project. The petrification wasn't instant, and it certainly wasn't magic, but the lake itself is genuinely extreme. Lake Natron has a pH that can reach 12, nearly as caustic as pure ammonia. Water temperatures at the shallow margins can hit 60 degrees Celsius, hot enough to scald skin on contact. And the color is otherworldly. Across its surface, the water shifts between deep crimson and burnt orange, stained by massive colonies of extremophile microorganisms, salt-loving bacteria that thrive in conditions almost nothing else can tolerate. Here's the part that defies logic. Roughly 75% of the world's lesser flamingos breed at Lake Natron, not despite the hostile chemistry, because of it. The scalding alkaline shallows create a moat that predators simply cannot cross. Jackals, hyenas, and raptors stay away from the caustic flats, which means flamingo chicks grow up in one of the safest nurseries in Africa. The flamingos themselves evolved thick, leathery skin on their legs to withstand the water, turning a chemical death trap into the one place their species can reliably reproduce. That arrangement has worked for thousands of years, but it's fragile. Proposals to build a soda ash mining operation on the lake have triggered fierce conservation battles. If the water chemistry shifts, the flamingos lose their nursery and there's no backup. Lake Natron isn't just a strange landmark, it's the foundation of an entire species' survival, and it works precisely because it's lethal to almost everything else. Flamingos evolved to survive their lake. But what about a lake humans willingly walk to every single day, even though the water is near boiling? On the Caribbean island of Dominica, hidden inside the Morne Trois Pitons National Park, there's a body of water roughly 60 to 75 meters across that sits in a constant state of violent agitation. Steam pours off its surface in thick clouds. The edges shimmer with heat. And at the center, the water churns and rolls in a way that makes measurement nearly impossible. Researchers have recorded temperatures between 82 and 92 degrees Celsius at the shoreline. The center is too turbulent and too hot for instruments to get close. This is Dominica's boiling lake, and it's not heated by a geothermal spring. It's a flooded fumarole, a crack in the Earth's crust where volcanic gases and superheated steam vent directly into a water-filled basin. The heat comes from below, constantly, and the lake essentially sits on top of an open volcanic vent. What makes Boiling Lake remarkable isn't just that it exists. It's that people hike to its rim every single day. The trail is a grueling 6-hour round trip through dense tropical jungle, across a sulfur-streaked valley, and up slippery volcanic rock. Tour groups do it regularly. Hikers stand at the edge, surrounded by clouds of steam, looking down into a cauldron of near-boiling water with nothing but a few meters of wet rock between them and a very bad day. And the lake doesn't always cooperate. In 1880, a phreatic eruption drained the entire basin overnight, turning it into a steaming, empty crater. The same thing happened again in 2004. The water simply vanished, leaving behind a hissing pit of rock and gas. Both times the lake refilled within days as groundwater surged back in. The plumbing system beneath Boiling Lake is still poorly understood, which means the next disappearing act could happen without any warning at all. One day it's a churning cauldron, the next it's a hole in the ground. Boiling Lake is a place you can look at but never touch. But there's one lake where you can actually get in and swim surrounded by millions of living creatures. Deep in the rock islands of Palau, a small marine lake called Ongamel holds one of the most surreal ecosystems on the planet. Around 12,000 years ago, rising sea levels flooded a limestone basin and sealed it, off from the open ocean. Trapped inside, a population of golden jellyfish began to evolve in total isolation. With no predators to flee from, they gradually lost nearly all of their sting. Their nematocysts, the stinging cells that make most jellyfish painful to touch, still exist, but the venom is so weak that humans can't feel it. Every morning, millions of these jellyfish begin a slow horizontal migration across the lake, following the arc of the sun. They drift in massive golden clouds just beneath the surface, pulsing gently, absorbing light to feed the symbiotic algae living inside their tissues. Swimmers are allowed to float among them, surrounded on all sides by a living constellation of translucent golden bodies. It's one of the most otherworldly experiences available on Earth. But the paradise has a hard floor, literally. Below about 15 meters, the lake changes completely. Oxygen vanishes, hydrogen sulfide saturates the water, a toxic gas produced by bacteria decomposing, organic material in the lightless depths. This anoxic layer is lethal. Anything that sinks below the boundary dies. Scuba diving is banned in Jellyfish Lake, not to protect the jellyfish, but to protect divers, because descending into the hydrogen sulfide layer can poison a person through their skin before they even realize they've gone too deep. The ecosystem is also more fragile than it appears. In 2016, a severe El Niño event warmed the lake enough to devastate the jellyfish population. Numbers crashed from millions to nearly zero, and Palau closed the lake to visitors entirely. By 2018, the population had slowly recovered enough to reopen, but the episode exposed just how delicate this balance really is. One warm season nearly wiped out a species that took thousands of years to evolve. Every lake we've seen so far warns you that it's dangerous. You can see the boiling water. You can feel the heat. You can read the radiation signs. But on the night of August 21st, 1986, a lake in Cameroon gave no warning at all. Lake Nyos sits inside the crater of an old volcano in the highlands of northwestern Cameroon. It's a quiet lake, small, deep, and surrounded by green hills. Villages dotted the valleys below, and for generations, people lived beside it without incident. But beneath the surface, something had been building for decades. Carbon dioxide from volcanic activity deep below the lakebed had been slowly dissolving into the bottom layers of the water. In most lakes, seasonal mixing would release that gas gradually. But Nyos is what scientists call a meromictic lake. Its layers don't mix. The deep water stays deep. And the CO2 just kept accumulating year after year, building pressure like a sealed bottle of soda. On that August night, something disturbed the lake. A landslide, a shift in water temperature, possibly a small volcanic tremor. The trigger is still debated. Whatever it was, it caused the saturated deep water to suddenly rise, and when it did, the dissolved CO2 erupted out of solution in a massive limnic eruption. An estimated 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide burst from the lake in a matter of hours, forming an invisible cloud that was heavier than air. That cloud rolled silently down the surrounding valleys at speeds of up to 50 kilometers per hour. It displaced the oxygen in its path, filling every low-lying space with unbreathable gas. People didn't run because they had no warning, no sound, no smell, no visible sign that anything was wrong. They simply collapsed where they stood. By morning, 1,746 people were dead. Livestock lay in the fields. Insects had gone silent. Survivors who happened to be on higher ground woke up and walked into valleys where everyone they knew had stopped breathing. When French and American scientists arrived, they found a lake that had turned from blue to deep brown, the overturned sediment staining the surface. The bodies were intact. There was no physical destruction, no fire, no flood damage, just silence and death across an entire region. Engineers later installed degassing pipes that continuously siphoned CO2-rich water from the lake's depths, releasing it safely at the surface. The system is working, but the volcanic system feeding gas into the lake is still active. And there are other crater lakes in Cameroon and around the world that share the same geology. Some of them aren't monitored at all. Every lake we've covered exists on the surface. You can see it, study it, sometimes swim in it. But the strangest lake on Earth has been hidden from everything, including sunlight, for 15 million years. Buried beneath roughly 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice lies Lake Vostok, a body of fresh water roughly the size of Lake Ontario. It stretches about 250 kilometers long and 50 kilometers wide, sitting in total darkness beneath the coldest, most inhospitable ice sheet on the planet. The water surface rests about 200 meters below sea level, pressed down by the unimaginable weight of the ice above, ice that rises over 3,400 meters at the surface. The pressure at the bottom of Vostok is immense. The temperature hovers just below zero, and no photon of light has reached this water since before our species existed. Soviet scientists first suspected a lake might exist beneath Vostok Station in the 1960s, based on seismic readings and radar surveys. But it wasn't confirmed until the 1990s, when satellite and airborne radar revealed the full scale of what was hiding down there. The discovery was staggering. An enormous subglacial lake sealed from the atmosphere for millions of years, potentially harboring conditions unlike anything else on Earth. In 2012, a Russian drilling team finally pierced through to the lake's surface after more than 2 decades of drilling. The moment the drill broke through, pressurized water surged upward into the borehole, refreezing almost instantly. Samples of that refrozen ice were brought to the surface and analyzed. What researchers found was remarkable. Diverse microbial DNA, including sequences that didn't match any known organisms in existing databases. Something was alive down there. Not just surviving, but apparently thriving in conditions that should make life impossible. No sunlight, almost no nutrients, crushing pressure, and near freezing temperatures. The implications reach far beyond Antarctica. Lake Vostok is considered the closest analog on Earth to the subsurface oceans believed to exist on Jupiter's moon Europa and Saturn's moon Enceladus. Those moons are covered in thick ice shells with liquid water oceans beneath, conditions remarkably similar to what exists under the Antarctic ice cap. Studying what survived in Vostok rehearses how we'll eventually search for life on other worlds. And the deepest question is still unanswered. Whatever is living in Lake Vostok has been evolving in total isolation for 15 million years, cut off from every other ecosystem on the planet, in complete darkness, under conditions we once thought were incompatible with life. What did it become? These aren't curiosities on a list. They're evidence that the Earth still holds secrets we're only beginning to understand. A Soviet nuclear burial site where the radiation outlived the lake itself. A caustic flamingo nursery built on acid and heat. A boiling cauldron that hikers visit for fun. A golden jellyfish paradise floating over a poisonous abyss. A silent lake that killed nearly 2,000 people without a sound. And a sealed Antarctic Ocean, older than our species, where something is still alive in the dark. The planet is stranger than any map shows, more extreme, more mysterious, and more alive than most people assume. And these lakes are proof that some of the most extraordinary places on Earth aren't hidden on distant planets or in deep space. They're right here, sitting in the ground, beneath our feet. Which of these lakes shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this one, hit like and subscribe for more. Also, check out the videos on screen. I think you'll enjoy them too. Thanks for watching.